Sometimes I wonder if everything would have been different if my father had not lost his job that summer. I was only 16, but I remember the shift in our home like it was yesterday. He used to come home with a smile, ruffling my hair as he told me about his day. My mother would hum as she prepared dinner, and my little sister Lily would chatter endlessly about school. Back then, life felt simple, predictable. But things changed overnight. My father's job was gone, and suddenly, the house was filled with whispered conversations and worried glances. My mother started clipping coupons, and my father spent hours on his laptop, sending out resumes. I tried to help in the only way I could. I started saving every penny I earned from my part-time job at the bookstore. While my friends spent their weekends shopping and going to the movies, I was working extra shifts and stuffing cash into my savings account, dreaming of the day I would go to college and build a life of my own. Then came my sister's wedding. She was the golden child, the one who never had to worry about money. She wanted the perfect day, an extravagant venue, designer dresses, imported flowers. My parents agreed without hesitation. I thought nothing of it until the day I checked my bank account. It was empty. Every single dollar I had saved for my future was gone. At first, I tried to convince myself that it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe my parents had taken the money temporarily, intending to return it. But as the days passed and the wedding preparations continued, it became painfully clear that my savings were never coming back. My mother acted as though nothing had happened. She fluttered around the house, gushing over seating arrangements and floral decorations, never once acknowledging what she had done. My father avoided me altogether, burying himself in meaningless tasks or disappearing whenever I entered the room. But my sister, Lily, was the worst. She flaunted her expensive wedding plans in my face, bragging about the custom-made gown, the extravagant venue, and the imported roses she had always dreamed of. One evening, as she twirled in front of the mirror in yet another designer dress, she smirked at me. "You are lucky, you know? I saved you from wasting all that money on college. You should be thanking me." I could barely breathe. My fists clenched at my sides, but I forced myself to stay silent. It was not just the words. It was the sheer audacity of them, the complete lack of remorse. Small injustices piled up. My mother began treating me like a personal assistant, demanding I handle wedding errands, run last-minute shopping trips, and cater to Lily's endless requests. When I refused, I was met with guilt-tripping sighs and accusations of being selfish. "Your sister is getting married. Do you have any idea how much stress she is under? The least you can do is help her." My mother snapped one afternoon when I protested, running across town to pick up her shoes. "I already lost all my savings for this wedding. Is that not enough?" I shot back. Her expression darkened. "Do not be so dramatic. It is just money. You will earn more. But your sister's wedding is once in a lifetime. Show some support." Support? The very idea made my stomach churn. My father, normally quiet and distant, spoke up only once. It was late one evening, and I found him in the kitchen, staring out the window. "Emma," he said without looking at me, "you are young. You will recover from this. Family is more important than money." A bitter laugh bubbled up inside me. "Family? Or just Lily?" He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "You do not understand now, but you will one day. We did what we had to do." What they had to do, as if betraying their own daughter was some kind of noble sacrifice. Days passed, and my resentment grew into something darker. I stopped speaking at the dinner table, ate my meals in silence while my parents and Lily laughed and chattered about guest lists and honeymoon destinations. I was invisible in my own home, reduced to nothing more than a source of money they had already drained dry. Then came the ultimate insult. One evening, I overheard my mother talking to a relative on the phone. "Emma, Oh, she will be fine. College was never really a good fit for her. Anyway, she is better off staying close to home. Maybe she can even help Lily and her husband once they start their family. My blood ran cold. They had never intended to give that money back. They had stolen my future, and now they expected me to simply accept it, to play the role of the dutiful daughter while Lily lived out her perfect, charmed life. That was the moment I knew I was done. This was not just favoritism or selfishness. This was outright betrayal, and I was going to make sure they regretted every single decision they had made. The evening before Lily's wedding, I found myself standing in the dimly lit hallway outside my parents' bedroom, heart pounding as I listened to their hushed conversation. I had not meant to eavesdrop, but their voices were tense, urgent, and something told me I needed to hear whatever they were discussing. "We cannot tell her," my mother whispered. "She will ruin everything." "She is going to find out sooner or later," my father sighed. "You know how she is. Emma does not let things go." "Then we make sure she has no choice," my mother said firmly. "She will stay here. It is for the best." I clenched my fists, my mind racing. Stay here? What were they talking about? A sick feeling curled in my stomach as I slowly backed away from their door. I needed answers. Now I went straight to my mother's desk, where she kept important documents. My hands shook as I flipped through a stack of papers until I found what I was dreading: a withdrawal statement from my savings account. My full name, the date of the transaction, and my mother's signature at the bottom. It was legal theft. She had taken the money in her name, knowing full well I could do nothing about it. The room spun. My chest tightened, and for a moment I thought I might collapse right there. But then something even worse caught my eye: an open email on her laptop. A college rejection letter, addressed to me. My breath caught in my throat. I had never seen this email before. I had never even applied to this school. Yet the words were clear as day. "We regret to inform you that your application to our university has been declined." Confusion twisted into horror as I scrolled further, my mother's reply sitting right below the rejection. "Thank you for your response. Emma has decided to withdraw from all universities and will remain home to support her family. Please consider this matter closed." I stumbled back from the desk, bile rising in my throat. They had not just stolen my money, they had stolen my future. They had made the decision for me without my knowledge, without my consent. I stormed into the living room, shaking with rage. My mother looked up from where she was polishing the silverware for the wedding reception. "Emma, what is wrong? You lied to me." My voice was sharp, shaking. "You stole my money. You withdrew my college applications. You made that choice for me." She set the cloth down with an exasperated sigh. "Emma, stop being dramatic. You are blowing this out of proportion. We did what was best for you." Best? For me? I let out a sharp laugh. "You stole everything I worked for, everything I dreamed of." My father finally spoke, his tone tired, as if this was nothing more than an inconvenience. "You do not understand now, but you will someday. Family takes care of each other. Lily needed that money." I turned to my sister, who was standing at the doorway, arms crossed, an amused smirk on her lips. "Oh, come on, Emma. College was never your thing anyway. What were you even going to do? Get some boring office job? At least this way you can be useful." My vision blurred with rage. Useful? Is that what I am to you all? Just someone to take from, to clean up after you, to sacrifice for you? My mother's face hardened. "Enough of this nonsense. You are not a child anymore. This is reality. You will stay here and help your sister when she starts her family. That is your place." Something inside me broke. I had spent my entire life being the afterthought, the inconvenience, the one who was expected to give without ever receiving. And now they were trying to strip me of any choice, any independence. My hands curled into fists. I felt powerless, trapped in a house where my dreams were treated like disposable scraps. I had no allies, no support, no future. Unless I took it back. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing my voice to steady. I will not be staying here. I am leaving. My mother scoffed. And where will you go? You have no money, no school, no plan. You will come crawling back in no time. Lily chuckled under her breath. You always overreact, Emma. You are acting like this is some big betrayal. It is just money. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. This was more than money. This was control. This was them keeping me under their thumb, ensuring I never had the power to leave. But they had underestimated me, because I was about to show them just how wrong they were. They had underestimated me, because I was about to show them just how wrong they were. I walked away from that conversation without another word, but inside, my mind was racing. Every ounce of betrayal, every stolen dream, every dismissed plea for fairness fueled a fire that I had never felt before. They thought they had won, that I had no options, no future outside of what they decided for me. But I was not going to let them win. I locked myself in my room that night, pacing as I pieced together a plan. I had nothing left to lose, and that made me dangerous. If they wanted to treat me like an afterthought, I would make sure they regretted it. First, I needed leverage. I spent hours digging through financial records, email exchanges, and anything else I could find. It turned out my mother had been reckless. The proof was right there. Unauthorized withdrawals from my account, forged signatures, and even fabricated statements claiming I had gifted my savings for the wedding. Legally, this was fraud, and I was going to use it against her. Next, I needed a way out. I had no money, but I had a few contacts, an old friend who had left home for college and had an extra room. I reached out, explaining my situation. She did not hesitate to offer me a place to stay. That was step one. Step two was ensuring my family faced consequences. The morning of the wedding, I sat across from my mother at the breakfast table, calm but firm. I need my money back, every cent. She barely looked up from her coffee. Emma, this conversation is over. No, it is not. I slid a printed document across the table. This is a formal complaint to the bank, detailing how you forged my signature to access my funds. Fraud is a serious charge. For the first time, I saw a flicker of panic cross her face. You would not dare. I leaned in, lowering my voice. Try me. If my money is not returned by the end of today, I will walk straight to the bank, the police, and every relative we have with these documents. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. My father looked between us, unsure of what to say. My sister, too, caught up in her wedding, barely noticed the tension. You are ruining this day, my mother hissed. No, I said, standing up. You ruined my future. I'm just taking it back. With that, I left the house and made my way to the wedding venue. If my mother wanted to ignore me, she would have no choice but to acknowledge me now. By the time I arrived, the guests were already seated, the music was playing, and my sister was basking in the attention like she always did. I walked straight to the microphone meant for speeches and tapped it, sending a sharp noise across the crowd. I would like to make a quick announcement before the ceremony begins, I said, voice steady. My mother shot up from her seat, face pale. My sister turned to glare at me, furious that I dared take the spotlight from her. I held up the papers. Did you all know that this wedding was funded with stolen money? My college savings, to be exact. Money I worked for, money I sacrificed for. Taken without my consent because, apparently, I do not matter as much as the golden child. A hush fell over the room. Guests whispered, heads turned. My sister gasped, mortified. Emma, what are you doing? Telling the truth, I said simply. You stole my future for a wedding, so I thought it was only fair I make sure everyone knows. My mother lunged forward, trying to pull me away from the microphone, but I stepped back. Do not touch me, I warned. Return my money and I will leave quietly. Otherwise, I will make sure this moment is the only thing people remember about your perfect day. The weight of my words sank in. My mother knew I was serious. My father looked like he wanted to disappear. My sister was on the verge of tears. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. A notification from my bank. A deposit in the exact amount that had been stolen from me. I smirked, slipped the microphone back onto the stand, and walked out of the venue without looking back. By the time I arrived at my friend's place, I felt lighter than I had in years. I had my money, my freedom, and the satisfaction of knowing that for once I had taken control. My mother tried calling me that night. I let it ring. I had nothing left to say to them. They had made their choice, and now I had made mine. The morning after my sister's wedding disaster, I woke up to a string of missed calls and text messages from my mother. I ignored them. I knew exactly what they wanted: to control the narrative, to convince me that I had overreacted, to guilt me into submission. But I was not done yet. I had made my move, and now it was time to make sure they felt the consequences. By noon, I received an email confirmation from my bank. The money had been fully transferred back into my account. I stared at the numbers on the screen, relief washing over me. My savings were mine again. My future was back in my hands. But it was not enough. I wanted them to feel the humiliation they had tried to force upon me. A week later, I met with a lawyer. With the documents I had gathered, proof of unauthorized withdrawals, fraudulent signatures, and my mother's email to the college, I had a solid case. My lawyer explained my options, and I made my decision. I was not looking for revenge just for myself. I wanted to ensure they could never do this to anyone else. The lawsuit was filed within days. The charge? Fraud and financial misconduct. My parents were served the papers at their home. The moment they received them, my phone lit up with frantic calls. I let them ring. Then, the messages started. Emma, you are tearing this family apart. How could you do this to us after all we have done for you? You ungrateful little brat. Do you know what this will do to your father's reputation? I read them all with a hollow satisfaction and deleted every single one. Lily, of course, was no better. Her messages were filled with rage, blaming me for ruining her perfect day. You are just jealous. You wanted to make everything about you. You are pathetic. I never responded. She did not deserve my energy. My lawyer warned me that my parents would try to settle the case quietly to keep their reputations intact. And that was exactly what happened. They reached out through a mediator, offering to return every penny plus interest if I agreed to drop the charges. But I wanted more than money. I wanted their names on record. I wanted the world to know what they had done. So, I refused the first offer. Then came their final attempt. A meeting. One last plea. I agreed, but on my terms. I chose a public cafe, a place where they could not cause a scene or manipulate me behind closed doors. When I arrived, my mother's eyes were already glassy with unshed tears. My father looked older, his usual confidence shaken. Emma, please, my mother started, her voice trembling. Do not do this. We are family. Family does not steal from each other, I said simply. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. It was a mistake, she whispered. We were just trying to help Lily. She needed it more than you. And I needed my future, I said, my voice firm. But you never cared about that. Lily, who had been silent until now, scoffed. Oh, grow up. You got your money back, did you not? Why are you still making a scene? I turned to her, meeting her eyes for the first time since the wedding. Because you all need to understand something. I am not your doormat. I am not your backup plan, and I am never coming back. My father let out a long breath. Emma, we can fix this. We can put this behind us. I shook my head. No, you cannot. I stood up, tossing a final document on the table, a restraining order. You will not contact me again. Ever. We are done. My mother gasped, her face draining of color. Emma! I did not wait to hear the rest. I walked away, stepping out into the fresh air, feeling lighter than I had in years. The lawsuit went public. Their names were tarnished. Their social circle shunned them. My father, once a respected businessman, faced scrutiny for financial dishonesty. My mother, once the perfect hostess, now had no friends left to impress. And Lily? Well, her perfect life was not so perfect anymore. People whispered. She was no longer the golden child. She was the daughter of frauds. And me? I was free. The money was back where it belonged, but more importantly, I had my life back. My future was my own again. No longer tied to them. No longer waiting for their approval. Justice had been served, and I had won. The lawsuit closed a chapter of my life that I never wanted to revisit, but it also opened a door I never thought I would walk through. For the first time, I was free. Free from their control. Free from the weight of being the forgotten one. Free to make my own choices. I moved into my new apartment a month later, small but mine. The walls were bare, the furniture minimal, but it was mine. Every morning, I woke up knowing that I had built this life for myself, no one else. My first major decision was going back to school. The money I fought for paid for my tuition, and with every class, every lecture, I felt the pieces of my stolen future fall back into place. The same parents who had dismissed my dreams, who had stolen my savings to fund my sister's wedding, were no longer obstacles in my path. They were merely a lesson in what I refused to tolerate again. As for my parents, they were no longer the untouchable figures they once were. The lawsuit had left them humiliated, their reputation in ruins. My father struggled to keep his business afloat as clients distanced themselves from him. My mother, once the queen of high society events, found herself uninvited, unwanted, and isolated. Their perfect world had cracked, and there was no repairing it. Lily's fairy tale life did not last either. Whispers followed her wherever she went, reminders of how her wedding had been funded through betrayal. Her husband's family, once eager to welcome her, now kept their distance. And without my parents' endless financial support, she was forced to finally learn what it meant to fend for herself. They tried to reach out. Calls, emails, even letters. At first, they were filled with guilt-tripping pleas. Then came the anger, the blame. How could I do this to them? How could I ruin everything? But I had learned something important. Their guilt was not mine to carry. Their shame belonged to them alone. And their downfall was a result of their own choices, not mine. So, I ignored every message. I had no more energy to waste on people who only valued me when they needed something. Years passed, and the scars they left behind faded. I built a life that they had never imagined for me, one without them in it. My career flourished, my friendships deepened, and my independence remained my greatest victory. One day, I passed by a wedding venue, couples touring the hall, planning their futures together. I paused for a moment, remembering that disastrous day when I had exposed my family's betrayal. I smiled to myself, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I had won, and I never looked back.